coming to you live from the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. This is the Alex Morgan Show.
How's it going out there this morning? There's a lot going on in the world. I'll get to everything just as fast as I can. There's a lot I want to talk about. Probably a lot that I won't get to talk about, as I am very, very busy this morning. I wanted to play a little clip for y'all.
That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
That was President Clinton from back in the 90s, when he had his little travel ban that went through. No, there was nobody that had any problem with it whatsoever. You heard no complaints from anybody. There was nobody shouting racist, Islamophobe, or anything like that. But you see how it is when one of their own does something that our president of today does in the same fashion, nothing different, but he's a racist and he's an Islamophobe, and yeah, it's just, they attack him on everything, and it really needs to stop, folks. They don't have to agree with what Donald Trump says or orders, but I mean, they do have to live with us. They have to live with him as our president, and they have to live with us, his supporters. That's just the way it is. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. By the way, if you hear any snoring going on, that's my dog Roscoe in the background. He's getting his Z's in right this morning, as you can tell. I do apologize for that. Here's a clip.
Islamic extremist Maajid Nawaz. Maajid, thank you for being here tonight. It's good to have you with us this evening. You know, you listened to that list, and we played the soundbite from our last conversation back in March when you warned that there would be much more to come. I suppose you're sorry you were right.
Indeed, and I think we have to come to terms, Martha, with the fact that Europe, Britain and the rest of Europe are in the midst of a full-blown jihadist insurgency. You were citing figures earlier that our security services are attempting to monitor around 23,000 suspected jihadists. That, by the way, is out of a population in the UK of just 5% that are Muslim, which means that 23,000 from 4 million Muslims in this country, and around those 23,000, that's those who are jihadists, around them will be those who sympathize with the ideology, Islamists, who believe in establishing a caliphate, and around them those who empathize with their friends who happen to be Islamists. If that's not insurgency levels, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's what Europe is looking at right now. Because they have allowed anybody to come in from any country and just overrun their borders, overrun their culture, overrun their language. They're defecating in the streets. They're stabbing people on the London Bridge. They're blowing up little girls at concerts, guys. At Ariana Grande concerts. But you think that would be sick enough, but instead of her, offering help for the families and this and that, what does she do? She throws another concert for them. Like that's what they need. They need another concert to go to. That's exactly what they need. It's outrageous. I mean, to think about. I'm gonna see if I can find the clip after the concert that she put on.
Ariana Grande in hysterics as she speaks out on the deadly terrorist attack at her concert in Manchester. Here's the latest on this heartbreaking situation. As you know, Ariana Grande's Dangerous Woman concert on May 22nd in Manchester, England, was hit with a bombing which is now confirmed as an act of terrorism. The world has come together to show love and support for the victims, their families, and for Ariana. Last night, Ariana herself spoke out for the first time since the brutal attack at her show. The singer tweeted an apology, writing, "Broken. From the bottom of my heart, I am so sorry. I don't have words." The tweet has over 1 million likes and counting. Fans are responding to Ariana with support and saying she shouldn't apologize because the attack wasn't her fault. TMZ has reported that Ariana was inconsolable and, quote, in hysterics after learning 19 people lost their lives at her show. The death toll has now risen to 22 lives lost, in addition to 59 injured, and some people still reported missing. So far, 2 victims have been identified, one an 8-year-old girl and another an 18-year-old. This is the deadliest terrorist assault in Britain since 2005. Ariana had just left the stage when a nail bomb exploded near the front door as people were leaving the concert. As we can expect, Ariana has now indefinitely suspended her world tour in wake of the bombing. She was scheduled to perform Thursday night in London and then go on to Belgium, Poland, Germany, and more. Not only is her team worried about safety and security at her shows, but we hear Ariana is in no condition emotionally to perform on stage. Our thoughts are with all those involved in this unthinkable situation. Please leave your love and support for Ariana and the victims down in the comment section below, and we'll keep you updated as more on this tragic situation unfolds. From Clever, I'm your host, Drew Dorsey.
Her fans, according to that lady in that video, her fans said that there was no need for her to apologize because it wasn't her fault. However, she does nothing to not promote open borders and inviting the Muslims in. She does nothing, folks. She just has another concert. That's it. That's her answer. Puts out a tweet. A tweet doesn't cut it. A concert doesn't cut it. Just doesn't cut it, folks. That makes me sick to think about it. Meanwhile, London leaders ask their people to accept it as everyday life. And threatens to ban Trump from coming to England. That's outrageous, folks. That is highly outrageous. Disrespectful.
The fallout of this in the wake of this weekend's deadly terror attacks, and President Trump now doubling down, slamming the mayor's call for calm in his city as a pathetic excuse. Kelly Wright, live in D.C. this morning with our Commander-in-Chief's, also his renewed push for the travel pause, which he now has a new phrase for. Kelly.
Rob, good morning to you. The United Kingdom is still dealing with the terror attack, as we saw in our colleague Greg Palcott's report. And British Prime Minister Theresa May says she thinks it's wrong for President Trump to be criticizing London's mayor at this time. In fact, she says the mayor has been doing a good job. The president's latest tweet that London Mayor Sadiq Khan is giving a pathetic excuse to saying that people in London should not be alarmed when they see armed police officers on their streets is sparking a firestorm of criticism against him. The mayor saying President Trump took his words out of context, but a deputy assistant to the president says the media is too obsessed with the president's tweets.
There are 7 people dead in London. There are 48 people, half of them in the ICU in hospital, and we're talking about tweets.
This isn't some game. This isn't politics. This isn't some mind game. This is for real. This is a war. We're at war, and we have to face the enemy and realize we're at war.
In response to the weekend terror attack, the president is doubling down as well on his call for a travel ban on 6 Muslim countries. In a flurry of tweets on Monday, he bluntly called it a travel ban, contradicting what his aides have said before were not a ban.
Whether you call it a ban, whether you call it a restriction, he cares that we call it national security and that we take steps to protect the people of this country.
In a related matter, the Trump administration has launched a new rule that calls for a kind of extreme vetting, if you will, for visas. It demands 5 years worth of social media profiles and 15 years of background information or biographical checks on those applying for visas. It went into effect on May 25th. Rob?
Okay, Kelly, thanks so much.
Thanks, Kelly.
There you have it, folks. Here's the mayor.
What's your reaction?
Well, there aren't words to describe the grief and anger that our city will be feeling today. I'm appalled and furious that these cowardly terrorists will deliberately target innocent Londoners and bystanders enjoying their Saturday night. There can be no justification for the acts of these terrorists, and I'm quite clear that we will never let them win, nor will we allow them to cower our city or Londoners.
Now, 6 people have been killed, many more injured. What do you know about the victims?
Well, I've been in close contact with the Met Police Commissioner and senior officers throughout the night. 6 people have been killed. More than 40 have been injured and taken to hospitals across London. Some of them, I'm afraid, are critical. I want to say this, though. The emergency services reacted heroically and brilliantly last night. Not only did they tackle the terrorists, but they helped the injured. And as a result of their swift action, few people have died than would otherwise be the case, but also the severity of the injuries are less bad than they could have been.
In terms of the police reaction, it was very quick for them to apprehend the individuals involved. Are you confident that the threat is over, that they've caught all of the people involved?
I've been the mayor now for 13 months, and that reinforces my view with the best police and security services in the world. They plan, prepare and rehearse for these sorts of incidents, and we saw their swift response last night. We saw the speed with which they shot the terrorists and also how they helped the injured as well. There are certain things I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but I'm sure after the government COBRA meeting later, which I'll be attending, the head of counter-terror and others will be able to tell the public what's going on. I would say this, though. People should remain calm and vigilant, carry on their normal business. The threat level remains that severe. And that's assessed by JTAC, who are independent intelligence experts, Severe means an attack across the country is still highly likely, and so we've got to all be vigilant. If we see anything suspicious or are worried about anybody, please report it to the authorities.
And what will you be discussing at the COBRA meeting?
Well, the COBRA meetings are where the Prime Minister chairs with various bodies around the table, agencies, police experts, including the members of the government, and we'll be looking at the investigations that unfold, which normally happens after these sorts of horrific attacks. And after COBRA, I'm sure the police will be making a statement.
Now, this is the second attack of this kind in London, this kind of low-intensity attack, where you've got somebody using a vehicle and then using knives. You know, how do you stop this kind of thing from happening in London? Is there a way?
Well, just like terrorists are constantly evolving, finding new ways to disrupt us, harm us, attack us, the police and experts and all of us are finding new ways to keep us safe. Londoners will see an increased police presence today and over the course of the next few days. No reason to be alarmed. One of the things the police and all of us need to do is make sure we're as safe as we possibly can be. I'm reassured that we are one of the safest global cities in the world, if not the safest global city in the world. But we always evolve and review ways to make sure that we remain as safe as we possibly can.
But there'll be many people out there who will see what happened and think, actually, it's too dangerous to go out. What would you say to those people?
One of the things that these terrorists want to do is to disrupt our way of life. They want to stop us enjoying the freedoms that we have, enjoy us mingling and mixing on a Saturday night in the heart of London, having a good time. They want to stop us voting on Thursday in the general elections and enjoying the democracy that we have. We can't allow them to do that. We aren't going to be cowed by terrorism, nor will we let them win. And we've shown in previous years and previous decades our stoicism, and we'll show that again today over the course of the next few days and weeks.
You mentioned the terror threat before, that it was brought back down to severe after being at critical. Bearing in mind what's happened overnight, was that a mistake?
No, I don't think so. JTAC are experts independent from politicians who analyse all the intelligence they have. For the last few years now, the threat level's been severe. And that's across the country. That means an attack is highly likely. In the immediate days following the Manchester attack, it was raised to critical because the police and experts were still pursuing line of inquiries and they weren't sure if other people were involved in the attack in Manchester. And critical means an attack is imminent. They've reduced it to severe, but it's still at a very high level. That means an attack is highly likely. That's why all of us have a responsibility to be vigilant. If we see anything suspicious at all, please report it to the authorities and the experts. But over the course of today and the next few days in London, you'll be seeing an increased police presence. Some of it armed officers, some of it uniformed officers, some of it plainclothes officers, all working incredibly hard to keep us safe.
Now, this has happened just days before a general election. The Manchester attack again, that happened during the election period. There was the attack on Westminster, again an attack on our democracy. Is Britain's democracy under attack? Is that the sense that you're getting?
My focus today will be responding to the attack last night and making sure we're doing all that we can to keep our city safe. But the general election is taking place this Thursday. One of the great things about our way of life is our democracy. Our elections are a wonderful thing, and that's one of the things that these terrorists hate. And one of the things that we can do is show we aren't going to be cowed is by voting on Thursday and making sure that we understand the importance of our democracy, our civil liberties and our human rights.
The Conservatives have suspended campaigning. Do you think that that's the right move to take so soon before a general election?
Look, I can understand why people don't want to be canvassing and knocking on doors today. My thoughts are with all those affected and caught up by the horrific attack last night. But, you know, the election's going to be on Thursday. I'll be voting on Thursday. Some people have already voted by postal votes. It's important that we do all we can to make sure that we are safe. And that's one of the things that we'll be exploring at the COBRA meeting later on today.
Is there an argument for postponing the election, though?
I'm not an advocate of postponing the election. I'm a passionate believer in democracy and making sure that we vote and we recognise that actually one of the things these terrorists hate is voting. They hate democracy. They hate elections and the public choosing who should be our leaders rather than leaders being imposed on us. And I'm looking forward to voting on Thursday.
And just a final message to Londoners and to people across the UK who are worried at what's happened overnight.
My message to Londoners and visitors to our great city is to be calm and vigilant today. You will see an increased police presence today, including armed officers and uniformed officers. There's no reason to be alarmed by this. We are the safest global city in the world. You saw last night, as a consequence of our planning, our preparation and the rehearsals that take place, the swift response from the emergency services tackling the terrorists, but also helping the injured.
Okay. He says more attacks are likely. However, London is the safest global city in the world. However, they've had 4 terrorist attacks in probably the same number of weeks or less. Let's see what Hillary Clinton has to say about this. I'm sure she's got a good opinion.
It's time for us to reach out to the world, to understand more about what is happening, not just in our own country, but indeed across the globe. It's a time for steady, determined leadership, like we are seeing from local authorities in London, including the mayor of London. And it is a time to remember how important our alliances are. You heard from Victor. You heard from Maya. You heard from the congressman.
You heard.
Getting to know one another.
Learning
about the experiences, the lives, the cultures, the religions, the food.
The food, even. Yeah.
Putting yourself in another's shoes.
Yeah.
Walking in them. It's even more important that we work together with our allies and our friends and our partners.
And our partners.
Yes, to keep us safe.
Yes, to keep us safe.
Also to expand our understanding of what we can achieve together.
This
is not a time to lash out, to incite fear, or to use tragedy and terror for political gain.
Fuck no. You wouldn't do that, would you? You wouldn't do something like that, would you?
Normally, this would go without saying, but we are not living in normal times. And that's why citizenship and leadership are more critical than ever.
I don't see why they had to put her little 2 cents worth in it anyways. That is crazy to me. That is, she is nothing. She is nobody.
Why not do it yourself?
Really, her opinion matters about as much as mine does. Not only that, she's fixing to go on trial, folks. I'm not sure on the exact details of this trial. However, I will be looking. This article here is from April, so I'm not even going to read this. This right here has come up in the past few days. I'm going to hold off on saying anything or giving y'all any information that could be false, because I don't really know the extent of this trial, and when I talk about this, I want to get all the details right. I don't want nothing to be left out when it comes to Hillary Clinton going to prison, because I am highly in favor of it. I hope she drags Obama down with her. I hope she drags George Soros down with her. I hope she brings Podesta down with her, man. The whole Democratic Party. Oh my God, they're such a joke. We haven't had an actual government since probably before the damn election, man. All the liberal Democrats can do is disrupt and just spread their lies and propaganda, man. Oh my God, I don't even want to sit here and talk about it, because frankly it makes me mad. They get paid good money, not just any money, our tax dollars. That's our tax dollars at work. The government is about 3/4 against the people, if you ask me. Maybe a little bit more, give or take, but there's very few politicians that are in office that are looking out for your best interest. I know that much. Now, Megyn Kelly, I don't know if you heard about this or not, but she actually just interviewed Vladimir Putin. Not one of her shining moments, I would have to say, but this is an interview that needs to be heard by everyone now. It's about 11.5 minutes long, but it is worth your attention. I will say that. Let's listen.
Russia was behind the interference with our American presidential election. But as you know, the consensus view in the United States is that you did. That's what the 17 intelligence agencies concluded, and that's what the Republicans and the Democrats on the Congressional Oversight Committees who have seen the classified report have said. Are they all lying?
They have been misled, and they aren't analyzing the information in its entirety. I haven't seen even once any direct proof of Russian interference in the presidential election in the United States.
We met President Putin in St. Petersburg, his hometown and Russia's former capital. He grew up in a modest neighborhood here, became a KGB spy master, and has been Russia's strongman for 17 years now. Welcome to the St. Petersburg International Forum. It was my job to moderate the forum, Mr. Putin's signature event, with more than 4,000 people in the audience, including world leaders, some sharing the stage. The normally wonkish gathering quickly became heated when I asked President Putin about Russia's attempts to hack the 2016 election. What the experts say is that this couldn't have been faked, that it's 100 factors that point to Russia. They say it's the forensics, it's the digital fingerprints, it's the IP addresses, the malware, the encryption keys, the specific pieces of code, that all of them point to Russia, and none of them points to anyone other than Russia.
What fingerprints, or hoofprints, or hornprints? What are you talking about? IP addresses. They can be invented, you know. There are a lot of specialists who can even make it so it comes from your home IP address, as if your 3-year-old daughter carried out the attack.
Come from you, mommy.
There are reports today in the American press that the Trump administration took active steps to ease sanctions on Russia almost immediately after Trump took office. Was this possibility ever discussed between the Trump team and your representatives prior to President Trump being inaugurated?
You know, I saw what was happening. To be honest, it was a big surprise for me too. What they're saying is just nuts. I don't know where the people spreading this disinformation came from. It's some sort of catastrophe.
After those testy exchanges, we weren't sure what was going to happen later when we sat down for our one-on-one interview and went right back to the issue of hacking. You had said for months that Russia had nothing to do with the interference of the American election, and then this week you floated the idea of patriotic hackers doing it. Why the change, and why now?
I hadn't said anything. It's just that French journalists asked me about those hackers. I told them the same thing I can tell you. Hackers can be anywhere. They can be in Russia, in Asia, even in America, Latin America. They can even be hackers, by the way, in the United States, who very skillfully and professionally shifted the blame, as we say, onto Russia. Could you accept that? In the midst of a political battle, by some calculations, it was convenient for them to release this information. So they released it, calling out Russia. Can you imagine something like that? I can.
Then the former KGB agent floated a Cold War conspiracy theory about U.S. dirty tricks.
Yeah!
There is a theory that Kennedy's assassination was arranged by the United States intelligence services. So if this theory is correct, and that can't be ruled out, then what could be easier in this day and age than using all the technical means at the disposal of the intelligence services, and using those means to organize some attacks, and then pointing the finger at Russia?
For the record, U.S. intelligence has concluded Mr. Putin himself ordered the disruption of the election. Putin said the U.S. should be the last country to accuse Russia of meddling.
I will tell you something that you probably already know. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but the United States, everywhere, all over the world, actively interferes with the electoral campaigns of other countries.
Goddamn right they do.
Put your finger anywhere on the map of the world, and everywhere you will hear complaints that American officials are interfering in internal electoral processes.
But with respect, that sounds like a justification.
It doesn't sound like a justification. It sounds like a statement of fact. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. But I repeat, we don't even have to do that. Presidents come and go, and even the parties in power change. But the main political direction does not change. That's why, in the grand scheme of things, we don't care who's the head of the United States. We know more or less what is going to happen. And so in this regard, even if we wanted to, it wouldn't make sense for us to interfere.
But the FBI, Congress, and a special counsel are nonetheless investigating Russia's interference, and whether the Trump team was in on it. A special counsel has been appointed to investigate contacts between your government and the Trump campaign. You've said that your ambassador, Kislyak, was just doing his job, right? So what exactly was discussed in those meetings?
There were no meetings. You understand? There were no meetings. When I saw this, my jaw dropped.
No meetings between Ambassador Kislyak and anybody from the Trump campaign?
I have no idea. I'm being completely honest with you. I don't know. The routine job of an ambassador. Do you think that from all over the world, or from the United States, the ambassador reports to me every day who he meets with, or what they discuss there? That's complete nonsense. Do you even understand what you ask him?
Well, you're his boss.
Listen, his boss is a Minister of Foreign Affairs. Do you think that I have time to talk to our ambassadors every day, all over the world? Complete nonsense.
Among those under scrutiny is the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. At a meeting with Russia's ambassador last December, he reportedly tried to establish a secret communications channel with the Russian government.
Yeah!
This was a proposal by Mr.
Here they go, folks. Trying to tell you that secret back channels in the White House to foreign countries and foreign government entities is something highly unusual that never happens. However, it happens during every presidency to many countries in the world. This is just disinformation. Research Bill Clinton Russia back channel. Yeah. God, man. I'll tell you what.
I don't know about this proposal. No proposal like that came to me.
Mr. President, did Jared try to set up a back channel to the Russians?
Have you gone back to speak with the ambassador about what was in those discussions you had with Jared Kushner, with anybody else from the Trump campaign?
No.
You don't hear her asking him about no back channels, do you? Because he would tell her, just like he's told her throughout this whole interview, that it don't matter if your name is Megyn Kelly. It don't matter if you do have a multi-million-dollar contract with NBC. You're full of shit, little lady.
Never?
No, I haven't.
Aren't you interested?
No, because had there been anything significant, he would have reported it to the minister. The minister would have reported it to me. There weren't even any reports. There's nothing to even talk about. There wasn't even any kind of specific discussion about sanctions or anything else. For me, this is just amazing. You created a sensation out of nothing. And out of this sensation, you turned it into a weapon of war against the current president. Well, this is, you people are so creative over there. Good job. Your lives must be boring.
Michael Flynn hasn't had a boring life. In 2015, he attended an event with President Putin in Moscow.
Whoa!
He was later hired, and then fired, as President Trump's national security advisor, and is now being investigated for his Russian connections.
Yeah.
Did you know General Michael Flynn? He came over here for a dinner.
Did you know him?
A photo of which has been widely circulated in the American media. What was the nature of your relationship with him?
You and I personally have a much closer relationship than I had with Mr. Flynn. You and I met yesterday evening. You and I have been working together all day today, and now we're meeting again. When I came to the event for our company, Russia Today, and sat down at the table, next to me there was a gentleman sitting on one side. I made my speech, then we talked about some other stuff, and I got up and left. And then afterwards I was told, there was an American gentleman, he was involved in some things. He used to be in the intelligence services. That's it. I didn't even really talk to him. That's the extent of my acquaintance with Mr. Flynn.
But what about his relationship with President Trump?
I will get along with Russia, and I'll get along with Putin, and he's not going to make us look bad anymore. But we're going to get along.
There have been questions in America about Donald Trump's finances. He hasn't released his tax returns. There have been questions about this secret Russian dossier, which he says is fake, but which purports to have blackmail information in it generated by the Russians. There have been questions about the communications between the Kremlin and the Trump campaign, all of which has Americans asking, do you have something damaging on our president?
Well, this is just another load of nonsense. Where would we get this information from? Why, did we have some special relationship with him? We didn't have any relationship at all. There was a time when he used to come to Moscow, but I never met with him. We have a lot of Americans who visit us. Right now, I think we have representatives from 100 American companies that have come to Russia. Do you think we're gathering compromising information on all of them right now or something? Have you all lost your senses over there?
Virtually every person. Toward the end of our conversation, we moved away from the election controversy to President Putin's reputation for repression. Many Americans hear the name Vladimir Putin, and they think he runs a country full of corruption, a country in which journalists who are too critical could wind up murdered, a country in which dissidents could wind up in jail or worse. To people who believe that, what is your message?
I want to say that Russia is developing along a democratic path. That is certain. And no one should have any doubt about that. But why do you feel you have the right to ask us these kinds of questions and do it all of the time, to moralize and to give us lessons on how to live? We're ready to listen to comments when it's done constructively, with the goal of establishing a relationship, creating a common environment. But we will absolutely not accept when these sorts of things are used as an instrument of political conflict. I want everyone to know that. That's our message.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube.
Yep. That's telling her Who the hell does she think she is to ask Putin about repression? Like you're like she was talking to the Tsar of Soviet Russia. I mean, come on, man. And here she is making that little short video there into a false narrative. Like, Trump had secret back channels to Russia. That makes him guilty. Folks, every president has back channels to different foreign countries, to different leaders, to diplomats, I'm telling you, to their ambassadors. I mean, I'm sorry. I get so tore up wading through this total effing nonsense. Putin is a more honest man than our mainstream media. I mean, it's plain to see. Plain to see. In the hours before daylight this morning, I learned about a terror attack that happened in Iran, where it's reported that 12 is dead in suicide attacks on Parliament and Shrine in Tehran, the capital of Iran. I thought that was some information about it. That was just some footage from the terror attack. There was gunshots, and you couldn't tell very much about what was going on. But the article reads, Islamic State claims responsibility for twin attacks on Parliament and tomb of late revolutionary leader in Iranian capital. This article's from The Guardian. I don't see a name on who wrote it. It reads, at least 12 people have been killed and dozens more injured in Tehran in a two-pronged suicide bomb and gun assault on Iranian parliament and a mausoleum for the founder of the Islamic Republic. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for the incidents within 2 hours, publishing a brief video that purported to show the assailants inside the parliament. If an ISIS role is confirmed, this would be the first attack conducted by the terror group inside majority Shia Iran. The parliament assault began when 4 gunmen armed with rifles burst into the building complex. One of the attackers reportedly blew himself up inside as police surrounded the building. Gunfire would be heard from outside. As police helicopters circled overhead, entrance and exit gates were closed. The mobile phone lines from inside were disconnected. Quote, I was inside the parliament when shooting happened. Everyone was shocked and scared. I saw 2 men shooting randomly, unquote. One journalist at the scene, who asked not to be named, told Reuters MPs continued scheduled sessions in another part of the complex. The Deputy Interior Minister, Mohammed Hossein Zafari, told Iran State TV that the attackers were dressed as women in order to gain entry. About 5 hours after the first reports, Iranian news agency said all 4 assailants were dead and the incident was over after unconfirmed reports of a hostage situation. Soon after the assault on Parliament began, reports emerged of another incident about 12 miles south of the mausoleum of Ayatollah Rawallah Khomeini, who established the Islamic Republic after deposing the Shah in 1979. One attacker detonated a suicide bomb outside the shrine, the state news agency IRNA reported, and another assailant was reportedly shot by security forces. A number of visitors were injured. The Iranian intelligence ministry said a third team had been arrested before carrying out a planned attack. Attacks are highly rare in Tehran and major Iranian cities, although a Sunni militant group named Jundallah and its splinter group Ansar al-Faruq have been waging a deadly insurgency, mostly in more remote areas, for almost a decade. ISIS, which adheres to a puritanical strain of Sunni Islam, considers Shias heretics and has carried out numerous attacks against Shia civilians in Iraq in particular, but this assault appeared to have a higher degree of coordination and planning than recent ISIS-claimed attacks in Europe. Would be a significant escalation. It took place against a backdrop of great regional tension, with Arab Gulf countries pushing for a more forceful isolation of Iran. Their regional arch enemy, the Gulf states, earlier this week served diplomatic relations with their neighbor Qatar over the close relationship with Tehran. Last month, the Iranian voters re-elected Hussein Rouhani, a relatively moderate figure, by a landslide in presidential elections. The high-profile attack of one of the most well-guarded buildings in the capital will come as a blow to the reformist president, who will have to address demands for greater security in the face of the ISIS threat. ISIS published a rare video in Persian in March, warning that, quote, it will conquer Iran and restore it to the Sunni Muslim nation as it was before, unquote, while accusing Iranians of persecuting Sunnis over the centuries. Militant groups, also known to operate in Iran's southeastern Sistan, Baluchistan province, which borders Pakistan and has a large Sunni community. Islam has declared war on the world. Well, maybe not Islam in general, but the radical Islamists have. I mean, whether they come out and speak about it publicly and tell everybody that they've declared war on you or not. I mean, the writing is on the wall. Whether you're in a foreign country other than the U.S. or if you're in the U.S., y'all need to keep this from happening to your country. The thoughts of a bunch of foreigners just coming in and taking over and making you the minority, taking over your language, your culture, running down your borders to where there's no such thing as a border. Your fellow citizens don't want no borders because, you know, that would make them racist this day and time. The last time I checked, the last time that I felt, you know, 1% political, radical Islam was something that was unspeakable of. You couldn't support it whatsoever. It was highly spoken of. Everybody knew what it is. Nobody tried to make it something that it wasn't, like love or a religion of peace or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, here comes along a president named Hussein, you know, and he divides this country more than we've ever been divided. He sends all of our jobs overseas. He makes it just like a reaction that if you don't support Islam and Muslims coming into your country unvetted, then you must be a racist. Is that not outrageous or what? I mean, we just went through a 2-term presidency with Bush, which we fought, or at least we thought we were fighting radical Muslim, or a war on terror, or what? A war on whatever they want a war on. It's a war on something other new every day until President Trump came along. You don't hear him hollering about no war on drugs, no war on terror, but there's sure a war on him, and I know that. There's a war on him, there's a war on you. And when he's attacked, folks, you're attacked. Whether you voted for him or not. And if you can't see the real side of Trump through his actions, through who his enemies are, then you're just as blind as the next brainwashed liberal retard. Oh my goodness, man. Folks, I don't want to call nobody retarded. I don't. But their actions just speak volumes. They are the most close-minded people that you will ever meet. If they disagree with you on one thing, they want you to shut up. You're dangerous. It's really the craziest thing that I've ever heard of. I mean, you grow up thinking that everybody's good people. Everybody's just about like you are. Everybody thinks the way you do and pretty much believes in the same things that you do. But when you get out in the world and start expressing your beliefs and opinions to other people, you will find out differently. I will tell you that. Folks, I got a new call-in number. If anybody wants to call in this morning, you're more than welcome. Number 606-887-4715. Again, that number 606-887-4715. Or you can call 502-780-5270. I'll probably be on for about another hour at least. There's a lot of more stuff I want to get into, but folks, we're all under attack. We're under attack from the radical Islamists. We're under attack by the radical liberals. We're under attack from our leaders. The leaders who support no borders. You didn't never hear about a country without borders before, like, 2000, did you? I mean, every country was a sovereign country. You didn't hear about no radical Islamic terrorists. I mean, this is really a plan of theirs. They want to bring in. They use Islam as a weapon against us. They bring these Muslims in, which the average Muslim family has 8 children, and the average U.S. family has 1.5 children. Okay? Let's say that Obama would have gotten what he wanted, and they would have brought in 100,000 more Syrian refugees, was it? Now, you take that 100,000 and you divide it by 2, saying that half of them would be male and half of them would be female. That's just on average, which I'd say that is a highly conservative number for the ratio between males and females. Because if you look into this much, you will find that the ratio for males highly outnumbers the ratio for females. And the ratio for military-age men highly outnumbers the age of the older Muslim men. But yeah, you take 100,000 and you divide it by 2. Okay, that's 50,000 Muslim families, you say. Okay. Those 50,000 Muslim families, within the next 10 to 15 years, are going to have 8 to 10 children. Okay. Those 100,000 Syrian refugees then are going to be anywhere from 900,000 to 1 million more. And then they will be natural born citizens. They have the right to live here, they have the right to work here, they have the right to vote here. They can purchase firearms. Is that not scary to anybody out there, I mean, really, if anybody out there is not scared by what I'm saying, I want you to call me this morning and tell me why you're not scared. Because I'm scared shitless, just to be honest with you, just the thoughts of that. Which I would take measures to protect my family and myself, but still, man, who's got the extra money to go buy extra ammunition and all these firearms and get ready for a war? I mean, I don't got the budget of no government, nowhere near any government. I'd say the Somali government has got a bigger budget than I do, but that's just being conservative. But anyway, that's really scary to me. And if it's not scary to you, then you're probably a crazy person, because we got fear in our brains and in our bodies for a reason. It's a signal to caution what may take you over, what may kill you, what may hurt you. I mean, it's really pretty much self-explanatory, but some people goes along with this. I mean, here they are telling you that a hijab or whatever it is that they wear on their heads is you know, just something that makes that it's feminism, it's respect, it's just a part of your everyday life, and you should just, you know, wear one, whether you're a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, a Catholic, or what. And that's really sad. That is. We live in a free country that gives you the freedom of religion, and they expect you to hijab out of respect for a Muslim, which is a foreigner in your country. That's ridiculous, folks. That is highly ridiculous. This article here is from ABC News by Jonathan Carl, June 6, 2017.
Advil liquid gels work so fast, you'll ask, what?
I will mute this ad, but yeah, I'll let you listen to the video and then I'll read you the article.
How would you describe the President's level of confidence in the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions?
I have not had a discussion with him about that.
Last time you said that, there was a development.
I'm answering a question, which is I have not had that discussion with him.
You can't say he has confidence in his Attorney General?
I said I have not had a discussion with him on the question. If I haven't had a discussion with him about a subject, I tend not to speak about it.
Advil liquid gels work so fast.
As the White House braces for former FBI Director James Comey's testimony on Thursday, sources tell ABC News that The relationship between President Donald Trump and Attorney General Jeff Sessions has become so tense that Sessions at one point recently even suggested he could resign. The friction between the two men stems from the Attorney General's abrupt decision in March to recuse himself from anything related to the Russia investigation. A decision the president only learned about minutes before Sessions announced it publicly. Multiple sources say the recusal is one of the top disappointments of his presidency so far, and one the president has remained fixated on. Trump's anger over the recusal has not diminished with time. Two sources close to the president say he has lashed out repeatedly at the Attorney General in private meetings, blaming the recusal for the expansion of the Russian investigation, now overseen by Special Counsel and former FBI Director Robert Mueller. But sources say the frustration runs both ways, prompting the resignation offer from Sessions. Trump flashes anger, Sessions recusal, Russia stories in tense Oval Office meeting. That's one article that they link to. Another one reads, Attorney General Jeff Sessions refuses himself from campaign probes amid Russia questions. Those are two articles I probably won't get into, but I'm going to read you this one. Asked by ABC News if the Attorney General had threatened or offered to resign, Justice Department spokesperson Sarah Isgur Flores declined to comment. Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer was asked today if the president still has confidence in his Attorney General. He could not say. Quote, I have not had that discussion with him, unquote, Spicer said. He also said, he was asked, so you can't say he has confidence in his Attorney General, Spicer was asked. And Spicer responded, quote, I said I have not had a discussion with him on that question. I don't. If I haven't had a discussion about that subject, I tend not to speak about it, end quote. The Democrats is the reason for Trump's disappointment in this term of his presidency, and I have to believe that he will be reelected in 2020, as the Democratic Party cannot compete with any candidate or any idea that they have pushed within the last decade. The Democratic Party is dead, in my opinion. This article here I thought was pretty interesting. It's from Axios, written by Jonathan Swan. The headline reads, Trump pinched Republican leaders on a solar-paneled border wall. In the meeting at the White House today with Republican congressional leaders, President Trump spent some time talking up his latest idea for the border wall. According to three people with direct knowledge of the meeting, Trump floated the idea that the wall could be covered with solar panels and the electricity generated used to pay for the cost. Trump said his vision was a wall 40 to 50 feet high and covered with solar panels so they'd be, quote, beautiful structures, end quote, the people said. The president said the most walls you hear about are 14 or 15 feet tall, but this would be nothing like those walls. Trump told the lawmakers they could talk about the solar-paneled wall as long as they said it was his idea. One person cautioned that the president wasn't presenting the solar panel wall as the definite solution. Where this idea might come from. A proposal to cover the wall with solar panels was among those submitted when the U.S. requested designs earlier this year. According to the Associated Press, companies winning contracts and asked to build prototypes may be announced this month. What else was discussed? The majority of the meeting focused on health care. Trump started off by saying the base was stronger than ever now and it was time to come through for them. He asked Mitch McConnell when the bill would be ready, and McConnell said the bill would be released soon and scored by the CBO and voted on before July 4th. Everyone agreed June would be spent talking about the failures of the Obama health care bill. McConnell suggested acting on the debt ceiling before the August recess to clear the way for tax reform, but Trump said they ought to do it after August so it doesn't cloud the messaging, presumably on health care. After the meeting, one source said the administration has little control over the timing of the debt ceiling vote and that they expected Congress to deal with it promptly. But you have to be able to see Trump working for you folks. He's put $3.3 trillion in the stock market. Created over 1 million private sector jobs. The coal mines are starting to come back. However, there's very few that's opening back up around here. But I see it coming back soon. I really do. Now let's get into Al Gore and his remarks made about the president's decision to get us out of the Paris Accord. I know I played this video the other night, but I need to point out the hypocrisy of Al Gore.
I want to get to the Paris Climate Accord in a second, but first I do want to get your reaction to the attack last night in London, on London Bridge. President Trump just made a tweet I want to get your reaction to. He wrote, quote, "At least 7 dead and 48 wounded in terror attack, and Mayor of London says there is, quote, no reason to be alarmed." What's your reaction to that tweet?
I actually happened to see the statement from the Mayor of London, and that's not what I heard him say, and I don't think that a major terrorist attack like this is the time to be divisive and to criticize a mayor who's trying to organize his city's response to this attack. The terrorists want us to live in a state of constant fear, and having an effective response is the main thing, and it looks to me like the London police were there in 6 minutes, and this scourge of terrorism has to be defeated, but we have to defeat it not only with force of arms, but with the force of our values.
All right, let's move on to the Paris Climate Agreement. President Trump said the decision to withdraw the U.S. from the agreement was about putting America first. Take a listen.
The Paris Agreement handicaps the United States economy in order to win praise from the very foreign capitals and global activists that have long sought to gain wealth at our country's expense. They don't put America first. I do, and I always will.
What's your response? Well, the fastest growing sector of our economy is clean energy and part of the sustainability revolution. Solar jobs are now growing 17 times faster in the U.S. than other jobs. The single fastest growing job for the next 10 years, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is wind turbine technician. So we're seeing a sustainability revolution that is historic. It has the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution, but the speed of the digital revolution. And rather than trying to recreate the 19th century and paint a picture of a past that's gone, we need leadership to gear America for the 21st century. President Trump's decision was unfortunate. It undermined our country's stature. But here's the good news. With the leadership of governors like Jerry Brown and Andrew Cuomo and others and mayors, Mike Bloomberg's doing a great job. We're seeing civic leadership businesses, Apple, Google, General Electric, you can go right down the list. We are going to see continued reductions in emissions in the U.S. We're going to meet the commitments under the Climate Pact in Paris, regardless of what President Trump does. And so we're seeing a lot of progress.
If we're going to meet it, if we're going to meet that goal of a 24 to 26% reduction in carbon gas emissions without being in the agreement, then is there an argument to be made that we don't need to be in the agreement?
No, the requirements were voluntary. He could have simply changed those requirements. But my point is we're seeing a technological revolution that is greatly needed. Somebody once said the Stone Age didn't end because of a shortage of stone. Something better came along. Same is true of the age of fossil fuels. But the Paris Agreement was really historic, but it laid the foundation for the faster progress that's needed in order to solve the climate crisis in time. And we could have faster progress with presidential leadership, but we're going to keep moving forward regardless of President Trump.
I want to get your reaction to something, an argument being made by the EPA Administrator, Scott Pruitt. Take a listen.
It was a failed deal to begin with. And even if all of the targets were met by all nations across the globe, it only reduced the temperature by less than 0.2 of 1 degree.
Less than 0.2 of 1 degree. President Trump made a similar argument.
Well, first of all, it's not true. But secondly, there was a famous economist, Rudy Dornbush, who once said, things take longer to happen than you think they will, and then they happen much faster than you thought they could. That's what's happening here. And the Paris Agreement gives tremendous momentum for movement all around the world. India just announced that within 13 years, 100% of all their cars have to be electric vehicles. China's emissions have come down 4 years in a row. All over the world, we're seeing this movement. And now, electricity from solar and wind in many regions is less than half the cost of electricity from burning fossil fuels. So we start making this transition, then pick up steam, and then suddenly we cross the tipping point. That is what is beginning to happen. But the U.S. ought to be leading this revolution and creating more of the new jobs here in the United States.
During the transition, you met with President-elect Trump at the time at the invitation of Ivanka Trump. Last month, when you were at the Cannes Film Festival, you said, quote, I think there's an excellent chance that President Trump will surprise many by deciding to stay in the Paris Agreement. Why did you say that, and tell us about your meeting with President-elect Trump at the time?
Well, I've kept the details of my conversations with him confidential. Seems like the right thing to do. None of it would surprise you. I did think there was a chance that he would come to his senses and not make the decision that he announced this past week.
Why did you think that?
It made sense for the country. All he had to do under the terms of the Paris Agreement was change the commitments. They're voluntary, and each country can determine its own commitments. So I thought it made sense, and I thought that he would come to his senses on it, but he didn't.
Have you talked to Ivanka Trump at all since that meeting at Trump Tower?
Oh, yes, I have.
About this issue?
Oh, yes.
Yes. I have not talked to her since the decision last week.
She must be very disappointed. She apparently was lobbying internally to have her father stay in the Paris Agreement.
I assume so, but I haven't talked to her since then.
President Trump has gone after you directly when talking about this issue of climate change. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to something he said.
Al Gore wants to eliminate the combustion engine, essentially, and flies around the world on jets and pushes plans that would help create China, make it stronger.
This is a criticism we hear from conservatives all the time when talking about people like you or Elon Musk or Leonardo DiCaprio, that you yourself have a large carbon footprint.
Yeah, well, I don't have a private jet, and what the carbon emissions come from my trips on Southwest Airlines are offset. I live a carbon-free lifestyle to the maximum extent possible. But the point is, our whole country and our entire world has to change, and we are beginning to change. Today, we'll put another 110 million tons of heat-trapping pollution up there. We're treating the sky as an open sewer, and now we see these climate-related extreme weather events virtually every day. Every night on the news is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation. But we've seen something else as well. Now we have the solutions to the climate crisis, and they can create tens of millions of new jobs. So the direction to move in the future is very clear. We're now seeing governors and mayors and businesses and civic leaders really beginning to move regardless of what the White House says. I was in one of the most conservative Republican cities in the country, Georgetown, Texas, recently. They've already gone 100% renewable in an oil state. Why? Because it's cheaper. And they're proud of the fact that they're putting less pollution in the sky, but they did it because it's cheaper and it's creating employment.
I want to ask you about Hillary Clinton just because you are the only other living person who has experienced what she is living, which is you won the popular vote, and yet the electoral vote didn't work out. I don't want to get into the whole Florida recount right now, but as I'm sure you don't either. But what is she going through? What is it like to actually have the support of more voters but not be able to walk into the White House to take the job?
Well, she's a strong person, and I'm sure she's going to be fine. In my own case, I learned earlier in my life that there are worse things than having a Supreme Court decision and go against you. And there are people that we encounter in our day-to-day life who have incredible burdens that they don't talk about. So I'm fine, and I'm sure she's going to be fine, too.
I do want to get one last thought from you on the president's decision on the climate change deal. You've been very optimistic and temperate in your remarks today, talking about how the United States is moving along towards the direction you want it to, even if President Trump is not going along. But in your initial remarks, in your initial response to what President Trump decided to do, you seemed more upset. You seemed to think it was a bigger deal, a disaster of sorts.
Well, yeah, I think it was reckless. I think it was indefensible. It undermines America's standing in the world. It threatens the ability of humanity to solve the climate crisis in time. The decision was a terribly mistaken decision. But in the aftermath of that decision, we need to move forward regardless of what he decides. And the good news is that the American people are going to provide leadership, even if President Trump will not provide leadership.
What's your message to President Trump? He likes to watch cable TV. He might be watching right this minute.
I think that he's kind of taken himself out of the climate debate. The other countries have said they're not going to talk with him about climate anymore. You know, every country in the world is on this train that's leaving the station, except for Syria. They've kind of got their hands full with the gates of hell opening there. And Nicaragua said it wasn't strong enough for them. But those are the only other countries that stand with Donald Trump. The American people are going to move forward regardless.
It has been 17 years since I sat down with you and interviewed you. Please don't let it be another 17. It's great.
That's a deal.
That's good to see you, Vice President Gore. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Folks, he sits there and claims to live a carbon-free lifestyle. But he doesn't say nothing about his petroleum company that he owns. This article is from oilprice.com. Written by Robert Rapier, 6th of February 2013. Al Gore's hypocrisy. The climate crusader profits from fossil fuels. Oil money is bad money, except when Al Gore has just released a new book, The Future, 6 Drivers of Global Change, and on a media tour to promote it. But he has had to face some very uncomfortable questions involving a charge that has been around for a while, that Al Gore is a hypocrite. The hypocrisy charge has been raised against Gore over the years. Until now, the most infamous incident of the apparent hypocrisy took place in 2007 when he widely reported that Al Gore's mansion had a utility bill about 20 times more than the average family home. I found the news was troubling. After all, Gore was the conservative-in-chief, but he certainly didn't appear to be walking his talk. But I also wrote that if he was running a standoff of his home, then the higher electric bills were more understandable. I also learned at the time just how rapidly partisan people can be when discussing Gore. Some of the left would not tolerate criticism of Gore, and I was vilified for saying that I was disappointed in his behavior. But I really wanted to like Al Gore. I thought of him as someone who was making a positive impact by calling attention to a serious problem and getting people to conserve. I defended him when people noted that Gore traveled around the world in fossil-fueled jets. After all, I argued if he traveled halfway around the world but convened 500 people in a foreign country to become involved and take action, then the net impact could easily be lower carbon emissions as a result of his travels. I even have an award on my desk signed by Gore. In 1996, I traveled to the National Academy of Sciences in Washington, D.C. and received the 1996 Green Chemistry Challenge Award as part of Professor Mark Holtzapfel's research team at Texas A&M. The award was presented by Carl Browner, the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, and it was autographed by Vice President Al Gore. I imagined at the time that someday Gore would become president, and I would show that award with pride to visitors. I say all of this because I want to make it clear that I didn't set out to dislike Al Gore, but I have come to the conclusion that he is in fact one of the worst hypocrites I have ever seen. Hypocrisy. When a climate change crusader sells out to fossil fuels. Gore has vilified fossil fuel usage for decades. In his new book, he writes, virtually every news and political commentary program on television is sponsored in part by oil, coal, and gas companies. Not just during campaign seasons, but all the time, year in, year out, with messages designed to soothe and reassure the audience that everything is fine. The global environment is not threatened. But what Gore did But what did Gore turn around and do? He sold his current TV network to Al Jazeera for $500 million. Gore reportedly pocketed $100 million. And in another widely reported story, he is alleged to have pushed to get the transaction completed before higher tax rates kicked in on January 1st of this year. So what's the problem? The problem is that Al Jazeera is funded by Qatar, which receives the bulk of its wealth from fossil fuels. Gore was grilled over his apparent hypocrisy, first by Matt Lauer. Lauer challenged him on the fact that he had criticized the influence of fossil fuel money in television, but then got very wealthy selling his network to another network that exists because of fossil fuel money. Al Jazeera had the money to pay Gore $500 million because of fossil fuels. Laura asked Gore if he saw a contradiction in his position. While Gore said he understands the criticism, he disagrees with it because Al Jazeera is a great network and has won major awards. Now, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't ever recall Gore saying that it was okay to take fossil fuel money in television as long as the network is a good network or is one that has won awards. He is engaging in the logical fallacy of special pleading, which is where someone applies a special exemption to their rules when those rules contradict their actions. For example, Al Gore, quote, "You should never run a red light," unquote. Me, quote, "But you just ran a red light," unquote. Al Gore, quote, "Yes, but I was in a hurry," unquote. I can apply the same special pleading to any oil company and justify consuming their oil since they make chemical charitable contributions and invest renewables. Investor alert, the end of the electric car. An extraordinary metal that is vital to the electric car boom is facing a critical shortage. One small company had positioned itself to profit hugely from the coming price shock. I will read that article next, as it must relate to this one. Jon Stewart, quote, "Can you see how people at home might think, but he's asking me in my life to make choices about light bulbs and a cost-benefit analysis for the purpose of sustainability when I just want to see my book, that's the issue," unquote. Al Gore, "I'm very, very comfortable." Let me start over, I'm sorry. Al Gore, I quote, "I'm very, very comfortable with it. I completely get the criticism, but this was a good choice and the net benefit for the U.S. is going to be very positive," end quote. Yes, Al Gore appears to be comfortable in selling out his principles for $100 million profit, and at least he, quote, "gets," unquote, "the criticism." He disagrees that it is hypocrisy, apparently on the basis that he doesn't like the word hypocrisy. Stewart highlighted the fact that Gore could have made a statement about his principles, but at the end of the day, Gore determined that the cost-benefit analysis benefited him enough to be comfortable with taking fossil fuel money. Cost benefit for whom? What Gore doesn't seem to understand is that this is the same cost-benefit analysis that results in the world's rising use of fossil fuels. He is like many environmentalists who don't seem to understand the real reasons we are dependent upon fossil fuels. They would rather blame the fossil fuel companies and their various lobbying and subsidies than blame the real culprit, the desire of consumers to have affordable and reliable energy. Poor people across the developing world determine that their contribution to climate change is insignificant relative to the benefit they will receive from introducing heat and electricity into their homes. Everyday millions of people around the world determine that the benefit of them filling up with gasoline and driving to work outweighs the cost of their fossil fuels consumption. Everyone, Mr. Gore, can argue that the cost-benefit analysis behavior favors their usage of fossil fuels. People from all walks of life, including stock environmentalists, use fossil fuels every day and justify it based on cost-benefit to themselves. Even Bill McKibben once admitted that he was a hypocrite, but like you, he rationalized his hypocrisy. And that, in a nutshell, is why the world is so dependent and becoming more dependent upon fossil fuels. People determine that the benefits of using fossil fuels outweigh the cost. You aren't special, Mr. Gore. You did what others do every day. The only difference is that you have used a bully pulpit for years to urge people to sacrifice and make different choices. Yet, when faced with the same cost-benefit analysis, you prove to the world that you are the hypocrite many always believed you to be. Al Gore activism has been a moneymaker on a tremendous scale. He has made a mint-selling carbon offsets, and in some cases even sold them to himself in order to claim that his very high carbon footprint was neutral. So while he's busy taking the high road telling people what to do, he himself not only goes and profits off that, but his profit comes from every sale, people, industry. He built his reputation on vilifying the imploring people to avoid. I realize that St. Al can do no wrong in some people's eyes, and some will wrongly conclude that this is a pardon attack. It is nothing of the sort, but I will never attempt to defend Gore again. I also hope to never hear his voice again. It grates on my nerves now because all I hear now are the ramblings of a hypocritical windbag. Now, let's see what company was planning to prosper from this precious metal. Cobalt frenzy. Prices surge 150% as tech giants supply.
3, 2, 1.
Sorry about that ad, folks. This super metal is the hottest commodity on the market right now, and it's not lithium. Instead, it's a metal that early investors are eyeing as a massive opportunity. Supply is already in deficit, and that's before the anticipated 500% increase in demand. It's a metal that is critical to the future stock price of everything from Google, NASDAQ, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, UPS, and many more. Welcome to the supply crisis that is all about cobalt. Cobalt is a metal that few investors know much about. It is critical to the electric vehicle revolution because it makes up 35% of the lithium-ion battery mix. That's 30% of batteries that are backbone to electric vehicles that are now mainstream. To meet demands for electric vehicles, billion-dollar battery gigafactories have been built and continue to be built. Consumer electronics are contributing to the demand and resulting storage of supply. And unlike lithium, which is a fairly common commodity, we can't source enough cobalt as things stand today, and demand is increasing quickly. Soon this story will get out. Analysis at Marquee Research Project deficits of 885 tons of this resource next year, 3,205 in 2019, and 5,340 in 2020. That's a deficit increase of 503%. As a first principle of investing when there is a supply problem, there is a massive opportunity for early investors. In the same perfect storm that the cobalt market, there are additional challenges. Currently, more than half of the world's supply of cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Use of child workers in appalling conditions in the DRC means that difficult supply chain questions are starting to be asked. Apple and Tesla will not be able to ignore the awkward questions that are being asked about their supply chains. Is their cobalt ethically sourced? Generally speaking, no. This is a huge and growing problem. According to this graph, by 2030, the demand for cobalt will be up 1,000%, folks. This is huge news. Anybody could really make some money at that, given the position and their chance. If they had the proper amount of money and position and stuff, anybody could really benefit right there. That's a highly needed resource, folks. This article is also about Gore's big oil connection and accident of birth. It's not exactly, well, hold on. This is from Time.com. It's written by Tony Caron, Monday, September 25th of the year 2000. It's not exactly the stuff of scandal, Al Gore's connection to Occidental Petroleum, but it doesn't do much for his efforts to proclaim himself free of the oil stain he sees all over George W. Bush. Indeed, the connection has even necessitated an occasional bit of uncomfortable shuffling from the Gore campaign and Naderites and other lefties and environmentalists berate the vice president over it. Much of the amusement of the Bush campaign. For much of the campaign year, environmentalist groups have dogged the Gore campaign over the fate of the Uwa and 500-strong indigenous Colombian tribe who threatened to commit mass suicide if Occidental goes ahead with a plan to drill oil on land they hold sacred. Just last week, pro-UWA hecklers disrupted a University of Missouri speech by Karina Gore-Shia and a second group were arrested trying to enter a Gore campaign office in Washington state. Of course, these protesters are mostly an opportunistic effort by the tribe supporters to take advantage of the election year vulnerability of Occidental's most famous investor, and the fate of the UWAs is unlikely to weigh heavy on the minds of swing voters in battleground states. But they do smudge Gore's efforts to protect himself as a friend of the earth. So much, in fact, that Gore's campaign is at pains to the point out of the Gore family holdings in Occidental Petroleum worth upwards of $500 million are the property of his father's estate, of which Gore is executor but not currently a beneficiary. And they add he's leaving the UWA's matter to the State Department. Some Gore bashers are more concerned that the fact that the Vice President's Reinventing Government program has helped Occidental in 1997 become the beneficiary of the largest ever American privatization of an oil field, when it purchased 78% of the Elk Hills oil field near Bakersville, California. Gore spokesman Jim Kennedy says the vice president never specifically pushed for the sale of Elk Hills or made any effort to profit from it. But in 1995, Gore had indeed called specifically for the privatization of Elk Hills, which had been the Navy's strategic reserve, arguing it was no longer needed, and he was merely repeating the Republican presidents from Nixon to Reagan had maintained, that the Navy no longer needs its own oil reserve and that Elk Hills should be sold to the private sector. Moreover, Occidental was simply handed the deal. Its offer, $3.65 billion, was twice as high as that of the nearest of its 22 competitors. The acquisition certainly turned Occidental around, instantly trebling its U.S. oil reserves and helping to almost double its profits last year, whereas it had been estimated that pumping Elk Hills oil would cost it in the region of $4.50 a barrel. It actually gushed through at $1.50 a barrel. Those prone to smelling rodents in the Clinton White House, such as the nation's left-wing columnist Alexander Cockburn, point out that the pre-sale assessment of the Elk Hills land was done not by the Department of Energy, as it would usually be the case, but by a private firm, ICF Kaesner. And then, with a note of, quote, gotcha, unquote, Cockburn throws in the fact that ICF Kaesner's chairman is former Gore campaign director Tony Coelho. Again, nothing conclusive there. The New York Times points out that the sale was questioned by environmentally oriented government departments such as the EPA and Fish and Wildlife Service, but that the DOE went ahead under pressure to meet a congressional deadline for the sale. To be sure, it was Newt Gingrich's Republican revolutionaries who revived the plan to sell Elk Hills back in 1995, and they congratulated themselves over its sale as a vindication of the Reagan legacy. It may well simply be an unfortunate coincidence that the auction was won by a company with long-standing financial and political ties to Gore and his family, but it certainly doesn't help his efforts to paint himself as the nemesis of Big Oil. The Gore family links with Occidental date back to the vice president's father's close relationships with Armand Hammer, the oil baron who created Occidental and who found himself in the limelight of controversy because of his extensive investments in the old Soviet Union. When J. Edgar Hoover had accused Hammer of being a communist agent in 1962, Senator Gore defended him on the Senate floor, and after performing others' favors for the company over the years, Gore Sr., after losing his Senate seat in 1970, took a job with Occidental Society for an annual salary of $500,000. The vice president inherited his father's relationship with Hammer, as well as taking over a piece of land the oil magnate had sold his father in a lucrative sweetheart deal, and dined regularly with the oil man in Washington during the 80s. Hammer was Gore's guest at the Reagan inaugural in 1984, and then Senator also got him a prime seat in the Bush inaugural 4 years later. Although Hammer died in 1990, Occidental CEO Ray Arani appears to have enjoyed a similarly charming relationship with Gore. Indeed, according to the New York Times, the traditionally Republican firm gave heavily to the Democrats in the 90s, starting with a $100,000 contribution to the Presidential Inauguration Committee in 1992. Occidental is further reported to have forked over $50,000 in soft money after a phone solicitation from Gore in 1996, and a further $100,000 after Arani spent 2 nights in the Lincoln bedroom that same year. Skullduggery, not even vulgarly proven. Arani became a good businessman, gives to the Bush campaign too, but Occidental connection may be nonetheless be a little uncomfortable when Gore is seeking to make hay out of the accusation that his opponents are, quote, of big oil or big oil and by big oil, end quote. There you have it, folks. He has ties to the oil companies. Him and his carbon-free lifestyle. I hated to spend all that time pointing out that little bit of hypocrisy, but that's pretty big, folks, in the world of politics. And there's a small line between the truth and a lie sometimes. But most times there's not. It just takes a little pointing out. If you dig deep enough, you can always find a little crookedness in most politicians anyway, especially Al Gore. I found that within, I don't know, about a minute of searching it. Didn't take me long. This article here is from the New York Times, written by Michael S. Schmidt and Matt Apuzzo, June 6, 2017. Comey told Sessions, "Don't leave me alone with Trump." Washington. The day after President Trump asked James B. Comey, the FBI director, to end an investigation into his former national security advisor, Mr. Comey confronted Attorney General Jeff Sessions and said he did not want to be left alone again with the president, according to the current and former law enforcement officials. Mr. Comey believed Mr. Sessions should protect the FBI from White House influence, the official said, and pulled him aside after a meeting in February to tell him that private interactions between the FBI director and the president were inappropriate. But Mr. Sessions could not guarantee that the president could not try to talk to Mr. Comey alone again, the official said. Comey did not reveal, however, what had so unnerved him about his Oval Office meeting with the president. Mr. Trump's request that the FBI director end the investigation into the former National Security Advisor Michael T. Flynn, who had just been fired. By the time Mr. Trump fired Mr. Comey last month, Mr. Comey had disclosed the meeting to a few of his closest advisors, but nobody at the Justice Department, according to the officials, who did not want the identified discussing Mr. Comey's interaction with Mr. Trump and Mr. Sessions. Mr. Comey will be the center of attention on Thursday during the testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee, where he is expected to be quizzed intensely about his interactions with Mr. Trump and why he decided to keep secret the president's request to end the Flynn investigation. His unwillingness to be alone with the president reflected how deeply Mr. Comey distrusted Mr. Trump, who Mr. Comey believed was trying to undermine the FBI's independence as it conducted a highly sensitive investigation into links between Mr. Trump's associates and Russia. The official said by comparison, Mr. Comey met alone at least twice with the President Barack Obama. A spokesman from the FBI declined to comment on Mr. Comey's request. A Justice Department spokesman, Ian Primer, I guess is how you would say it, said, quote, "The Attorney General doesn't believe it's appropriate to respond to media inquiries on matters that may be related to ongoing investigations," end quote. The Justice Department typically walls off the White House from criminal investigation to avoid even the appearance of political meddling in law enforcement. But Trump has repeatedly injected himself in law enforcement matters, and never more dramatically than in his private meetings with Mr. Comey. Quote, "You have the President of the United States talking to the Director of the FBI, not just about any criminal investigation, but one involving his presidential campaign," end quote, said Matthew S. Axelrod, who served in senior Justice Department roles during the Obama administration and is now a partner at the law firm Linklaters. Quote, "This is such a sharp departure from all the past traditions and rules of the road," end quote. But that raises one of the questions Mr. Comey will have to answer in his testimony on Thursday. If he believed that Mr. Trump was trying to get him to end an investigation, why did he not tell anyone about it? Mr. Trump's defenders note that Andrew G. McCabe, the acting director of the FBI, has said that, quote, there has been no effort to impede our investigation, end quote. Current and former law enforcement officials say Mr. Comey kept his interactions with Mr. Trump a secret, in part because he was not sure whom at the Justice Department he could trust. FBI officials were also unsure whether what Mr. Trump had done was a crime or how the conversation could be corroborated. So Mr. Comey kept the circle of officials at the FBI who knew about his interactions with Mr. Trump small because he did not want agents and analysis working on the case to be influenced by what the president wanted. Mr. Comey's decision to keep his interactions with Mr. Trump a secret from the Justice Department were the latest example of how he set himself apart from the department throughout the tenure as FBI director. Several times during the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's personal email server last year, for example, Mr. Comey made decisions without the Justice Department's knowledge or approval, often to consternation of Loretta Lynch and the Attorney General. Mr. Comey has said he made those decisions which have been praised and criticized along partisan lines to protect the FBI's independence. Quote, in a legal sense, we're not independent of the Justice Department, end quote, Mr. Comey told Congress last month. Quote, we are spiritually, culturally pretty independent group, and that's the way you would want it, end quote. Mr. Comey is also likely to be asked Thursday what he told Mr. Trump about the Russian investigation. Mr. Trump has told aides and said publicly that on 3 occasions Mr. Comey assured him he was not under investigation. Current and former law officials said that when the investigation was handed over last month to the special counsel, Robert S. Mueller III, Mr. Trump was not a target, but it is not clear what, if anything, Mr. Comey told the president about whether he was being investigated. While Justice Department policy allows officials to tell people whether they are the target of an investigation, prosecutors, not FBI agents, handle such discussions. Quote, we typically do not answer that question, end quote, Mr. McCabe testified recently. Former officials say Mr. Comey anticipated that the president might ask whether he was being investigated and consulted his advisors on how to delicately sidestep the question. The officials were not aware of how Mr. Comey decided to answer. When the Justice Department transferred the Russia investigation to Mr. Mueller, it gave the authority to investigate whether the president broke any laws by trying to obstruct the case or by firing Mr. Comey. As FBI director, Mr. Comey wrote a detailed memo after every major phone call or meeting with Mr. Trump and left the memos in the Bureau's files when he left. A special counsel, Mr. Mueller, has access to those memos, but the FBI declined a request from the Senate Intelligence Committee for copies, citing the ongoing investigation. It is unclear whether Mr. Comey still has copies of all of them or plans to read them during his testimony. According to people briefed on the memos, they describe not only what Mr. Trump said, but also such as his tone where he was sitting. In one memo, Mr. Comey described a dinner with Mr. Trump at the White House a week after the inauguration in January. Mr. Trump asked Mr. Comey to pledge his loyalty, but Mr. Comey refused. 2 weeks later, on February 14th, Mr. Trump kicked Vice President Mike Pence, Mr. Sessions, and other senior administration officials out of the Oval Office so he could have his one-on-one conversation with Mr. Comey, according to people briefed on one of Mr. Comey's memos. It was in that conversation that Mr. Trump asked Mr. Comey to end the investigation into Mr. Flynn and encouraged him to investigate leaks, the people said. Quote, I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go, end quote. Mr. Trump told Comey, according to the memo Mr. Comey wrote describing that meeting. Quote, he is a good guy. I hope you can let this go, end quote. Asked Tuesday about Mr. Comey's coming testimony, Mr. Trump replied, quote, I wish him luck, end quote. Folks, it doesn't matter what type of little memo that Comey may manufacture between the last day that he served as FBI director and his testimony. It doesn't matter what he writes on a little piece of paper. If you meet with the president personally, if you talk to the president on the phone, before he's sworn into office or after, whether he's president or elect or president of the United States, those conversations are always recorded. This is just more and more propaganda that they were pushing to the public, that our president is crooked, our president has obligations anywhere else but with the welfare of you, the people. Like he has, business ties that he wants to cover up with Russia. You heard earlier in this program how Putin was telling Megyn Kelly that her and the rest of the people that were saying this was totally crazy and must have really boring lives. I mean, what else are you supposed to tell these people, really? Folks, we're going on about 90 minutes here. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off, and I'll probably be back later this afternoon or tomorrow. You can check my social media pages. I'll let y'all know what I decide to do. I've got a busy day ahead of me, and more to do than I will get done, I would say. But I will try to come back this evening and do another broadcast for y'all. This has been the Alex Morgan Show. I thank y'all for tuning in. Spread the links. Spread the articles. Do your part. That's all I ask. Till next time. See y'all real soon.